All right, so let's dive into something we all know, and maybe some of us love team meetings,
Oh, yeah,
but love 'em or hate them, we got to figure out how to make them work, right?
for sure.
So this deep dive, we're going to be looking at this YouTube video by this guy, Motti Hasfari, and he's this veteran executive. Like, seriously, this guy's seen it all.
Yeah, he's got like over 30 years in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Like we're talking sales marketing.
Yeah.
He's been a CEO. He's worked with huge companies like
Oh, yeah. I think,
Getting,
yeah.
Yango Taxi, Philip Morris, Mars Red, like the list goes on.
Yeah, you know what really grabbed me about his video was that he doesn't just like give you the steps. He really gets into like why these skills are so important for being a good leader.
Yeah.
And he makes this point that I thought was really interesting. He says meetings are basically like mini leadership boot camps.
Yeah. I see what you mean by that. He's saying that like everything involved in leadership, like project management, motivating people, building a good team culture, even dealing with conflict, like it all comes up in meetings.
Right? It's like a one-stop shop for like leveling up your leadership game.
Exactly.
And here's where I think it gets even more interesting and relevant to us. Like all of us are kind of figuring out this whole hybrid work thing right now.
And that definitely adds another layer to everything, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Because when you're not seeing your team in person every single day, those meetings become even more important for staying connected and making sure everyone's moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
If you're leading a team that's hybrid,
Yeah.
like that, these meeting skills, they're not just nice to have. They're like essential.
Yeah, totally. And you know what else I like about Motti? He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. You know, like those real world challenges that leaders deal with all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for example, how do you make a tough decision as a group and get everyone on board even when people disagree?
Oh, man, that's the big one right there.
It is.
Everyone says, oh, you got to get buy-in. But actually doing that is way harder than it sounds.
Right.
So I'm curious what he has to say about that.
Yeah. And then there's a whole thing about how to deal with someone who's not performing well.
Oh, yeah.
How do you address that without, like, completely crushing their motivation?
It's a tough balance to strike.
It is.
You need a lot of like tact and emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And then there are those awkward personal conflicts that just seem to pop up no matter what.
Yeah, those are the worst.
How do you navigate those in a way that's professional?
Exactly.
And you know what? I think this is especially tricky for younger leaders or people who've just been promoted.
Yeah.
Like you were just one of the team yesterday and now suddenly you're the one leading the meeting.
Right.
How do you make that transition?
Yeah, how do you step into that leadership role when everyone still sees you as their peer?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be digging into today. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's a whole different game when you're the one who's got to guide the team and set the tone.
It really is.
Like you said, it's like stepping onto a new stage, but this time you're the director.
Totally. And that's another thing I really liked about Motti's approach. He's been there and done that, you know?
Right.
He's not just talking about theory. He's sharing what actually worked for him in these high-pressure situations.
Yeah, and in the video, one thing that really stood out to me was how he like breaks down what makes a successful meeting.
Oh, yeah.
He says it actually starts way before anyone even walks into the room.
You mean all that pre-meeting prep he talked about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of those one-on-one prep sessions, you know, meeting with key people beforehand to like hash things out and get everyone on the same page about why they're even meeting in the first place.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like, how realistic is that?
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean.
I mean, everyone's so busy these days.
Totally. It's tough.
So I'm wondering like, how do you actually find the time to schedule all those individual check-ins, especially if you've got a big team?
Yeah, or if everyone's just got crazy packed calendars.
Right.
Maybe it's about figuring out which meetings are the most important.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like the ones where there could be some serious disagreement or where you really need to make some big decisions.
Right. It's about being strategic with your time and focusing on those conversations that'll actually make a difference.
Exactly.
And it's not just about that individual prep, is it?
No.
He also talks about the importance of like actually having a good agenda.
Oh, yeah. He's all about that clear structure.
Yeah.
He says a good agenda is like a roadmap for the meeting, you know?
I like that analogy.
It keeps everyone on track and helps make sure you actually achieve what you set out to do.
Right.
Instead of just like wandering off on tangents and getting nowhere.
And he really emphasizes making sure you allocate time wisely.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to let meetings drag on forever.
Oh, yeah.
But if you set like clear time limits for each item on the agenda,
Yeah.
you can keep things moving and avoid those pointless discussions that go nowhere.
Right. It's about respecting everyone's time.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be stuck in a meeting that could have just been an email.
No, they don't.
And he doesn't just focus on like what you talk about in the meeting.
Right.
He also gets into the like the whole atmosphere of the meeting.
Yeah.
The dynamics, how people interact. He says all that stuff plays a role.
He's big on creating that positive and inclusive environment, isn't he?
Yeah, making sure everyone feels like they can speak up and that their opinions are valued.
Right.
Even when there are disagreements.
Exactly.
But that makes me wonder, like, how do you encourage that kind of open dialogue and constructive debate without letting things spiral out of control?
That's where the skill of facilitation comes in.
Okay.
It's about setting some ground rules,
Right.
actively listening and knowing when to step in and like redirect the conversation if it starts going off track.
So it's almost like you're conducting an orchestra,
Yeah.
making sure all the instruments are playing together in harmony.
Perfect analogy.
And that's something a lot of leaders struggle with.
Yeah.
It takes practice and a good understanding of how groups work to really get good at it.
I agree. And then Motti suggests something else that I thought was interesting.
What's that?
He says, you should assign specific roles to people in the meeting.
Oh, like having a timekeeper and a note taker?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about that?
I can definitely see how that could be helpful.
Yeah.
It gives everyone a sense of responsibility.
Right.
And it can also help prevent that thing where one person ends up dominating the conversation while everyone else just tunes out.
Exactly. It kind of distributes the ownership of the meeting, which I think can lead to a more like dynamic and engaging experience for everyone.
Makes sense.
And something else that really stuck with me was how much emphasis Motti puts on celebrating wins.
Oh, yeah.
Both big and small.
Yeah. It's so easy to just get caught up in like what's next on the to-do list and forget to take a minute to appreciate what you've already accomplished as a team.
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating those wins, even the small ones, can really boost morale. And create a more positive and motivating environment.
Totally. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Right. Even just a quick shout out or like a virtual high five can make a difference.
For sure.
And speaking of motivation, Motti also talks about how important feedback is.
Oh, yeah.
Both giving and receiving it.
He's really big on that whole feedback loop, isn't he?
He is.
He even encourages leaders to like actively ask for feedback on how they're running the meeting.
Yeah.
Which can be kind of scary.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
Especially if you're already feeling a little self-conscious about your leadership style.
Right. It can definitely feel vulnerable to put yourself out there like that. But I guess it's the only way to figure out what you need to work on.
Exactly. How else are you going to find those blind spots and figure out what you can do better?
And by asking for feedback yourself, you're kind of setting the tone for the whole team.
Right. You're showing them that it's okay to be open to learning and growing.
It creates that culture of continuous improvement.
True.
And, one thing that really resonated with me was how Motti doesn't try to present this as like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that every team is different and every leader has their own unique style.
That's such a key point. I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to copy what someone else does.
Right.
But it's not about that. It's about taking these principles and adapting them to your own situation.
Exactly. He's giving you a framework, not a set of rules that you have to follow. Exactly.
Right.
So what does all this mean for you, our listener?
Well, I think the big takeaway here is that mastering team meetings is like a journey.
Yeah.
It's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah.
It's about seeing those meetings as opportunities to connect with your team, to get things done, and to keep getting better as a leader.
And it's about realizing that even small changes can make a big difference.
Exactly. So here's a question for all of you listening.
Okay.
What's one small change you could make in your next team meeting based on what we've talked about today?
Maybe it's sending out a more detailed agenda beforehand, or building in some time for brainstorming, or just making a conscious effort to really listen to what people are saying.
Even those tiny tweaks can really shift the energy of the meeting.
Right.
And make it a more engaging and productive experience for everyone.
Absolutely. So keep experimenting, deep divers keep learning, and let's make those team meetings something we actually look forward to.
I'm all for that.